And so if you're not constantly told that you need a
Made the change really officially in 2013, but my views began.
I've been voting Republican probably about 20 years.
And then to say that we don't, that we are not owed that debt, that's not true.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Brown. I've been voting Republican probably about 20 years. I live in Duncanville.
Hi, my name is Cassandra McCrae. I've been voting Republican, oh gosh, I can't tell you how many years, but it would have been after Ronald Reagan. And I'm from Lancaster, Texas.
I'm Fred Moses, and I've been voting Republicans since I was 18, when I first became eligible to, and I worked in the Republican Party before that, just helping people, helping get black people in our area, working elections. And I'm the president of the African American Club of Collin County. And I've been chairman of the Republican Party in Collin County from 2008 through 2014.
Troy Jackson, been involved in the Republican politics since I was back in 1990 in New York City. Got involved volunteering in the party, been a Republican my entire life, raised with Republican values, and their values just meet the standard that my biblical upbringing and biblical foundation laid for me. I'm the biblical citizenship pastor at New Beginnings Church in Bedford, Texas. Glad to be here.
Franklin Hill. I started voting Republican in 2016. I had the opportunity to work on the Faith Johnson campaign, and I became a precinct chair a couple of years later in the Republican Party, and I've been working with the Republicans ever since. And same as Troy, that party mirrors my values, my religious values. I'm a Christian, and I think they are closer to my values than any other party.
Good afternoon. My name is Taft Thompson. I officially decided to become a Republican back in 2013, and I live in Dallas, Texas. And just as others have espoused, I'm a former longtime Democrat. I used to work for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and made the change really officially in 2013, but my views began to change about 2010. So I wrestled for maybe going on 3 years before I actually made the change to the Republican Party. But thank you for the opportunity.
I'm Karen Watson. I've always voted Republican. I was able to meet Ronald Reagan when he came to Dallas for 1984 convention. And so I was a high school student, and I've been a Republican before I was even old enough to vote. So, forever.
Let me say this, Warren. I remember I was in second grade, and the 1980 election was going on, and it was Ronald Reagan, it was John Anderson, who was independent, and Jimmy Carter, who was president. And I remember asking my mother, what is the difference between Republican and Democrat? And my mother said, and we were at a restaurant eating, I'll never will forget, she said, the Republican Party is just for rich white people. So that was the first impression that was given to me about the Republican Party. And so going into the black community, that's that image, that persona identified with the Republican Party still identified with us. And like I said, it took me about 3 years to come over, but that was the number one thing that I faced was the racial issue. But I had to discover on my own by talking to people, getting information from them, what the party was all about. And I can truly tell you that it has not only transformed my thinking, but a lot of the stuff that we see on the news, MSNBC, CNN, we just laugh because it's untrue. And so I say to fellow black people or whoever, the fact that a lot of things that you read and see are not true.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, the one that I've heard most is that we're sellouts. You've sold out the black community. In the words of Joe Biden, we ain't black. We have to turn in our black card because somehow being in the Republican Party, we don't want to give benefits to anybody. We don't want to help anybody. And I'll give you a joke that proves it, that is a real incident. A friend of mine and I chose to go play the lottery for one of those big $1 billion jackpots, one of those big ones. And we both went to the same 7-Eleven, we bought our tickets. And as we were leaving, she says, so if you win, you're gonna give me some of your money, right? So what you mean? I paid for my ticket. Well, but if you win, you're gonna give me some of your money. I said, are you gonna give me some of yours if you win? She said, just like a Republican, not wanting to share anything. I said, just like a Democrat, always wanting to take somebody else's money.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I missing information in terms of just trying to talk to black people, black professionals, sometime about the basic issues of like abortion. When you talk about that, and that they're saying that we as Republicans don't care about families, which we dearly do, and that we don't want women to have a choice, because we bring those children in the world, in our world, in the society, but then we don't want to help them, and so they see welfare as helping the black community, but it really hurts them. And so we should give them an opportunity to, and then we want to give, I know in Washington D.C. when President Obama became president, they had a school choice program up there. Kids were doing well. When he got in office, he stopped that program. And so those are the kind of things that are happening in the black community, but we don't, us as black, they don't show that we care. We do care about them. We care about families. We want people to have a good job. We want people to, we want people to love the Lord.
Right.
We do. And so those are the kind of issues that we talk to other black people about, but they're closed-minded. They have their issues. It's not building the black people up, but it's tearing them down or keeping them down. And so that's why it's so important that when we talk about, we can go back and talk about the civil rights issue that was finally enacted in 64, but in 57 it was passed by Eisenhower. And so, and when but they're still as a profound misinformation, misrepresentation, that we don't care about our community, and we really do, and we can show. And when we talk about the results of President Trump when he was in office, more black people had jobs than at any other time in history. But they don't. If you mention the word Trump, they don't listen anymore. But the great things that he did in his administration, and that this misrepresentation, and so we really do want help people to. We can do well, and we need to do well. This is it's such a what's happening under the Biden administration. And all these people coming our country illegally. And I look at my community. I live in Plano, Collin County, and I look at the car washes in there. A car wash I was going for before Biden was elected. Had half of the black people that worked there looked like me. Now I go there, and none of them look. We don't have anybody. You go to these places, And you see, now that's not hurting out. And why can't our black churches or black communities see that? That they go to those places now, those jobs, and you know, they're low paying jobs, but there's still people working. And you look at those places now, you know, the people, you go there, they don't talk like us, you know? And it's really hurting us. And so we really need to be looking at ourselves and looking at what's happening. And it's important what's happening. We need to care about our own people. And we care about them. We will be looking at how we vote and how we represent and how people are representing us. And we need to be sitting at some of these tables. And the tables people sit at the tables, they don't look like us.
Right.
The decisions would be different if we were sitting at those tables. And we do that by voting. We do that by exercising our rights.
Right.
We care about people.
I think it's ridiculous to assume that black Republicans don't care about black people. I can honestly say that I haven't met a person that cares more about black people than myself. And I know these people who are also on the panel, and it's the same thing. I mean, going back through my own personal history, my own sacrifices, my own, what you give, your talents, your treasure, and your time, and that can stand up to anybody's record. I'm not saying I'm Nelson Mandela, but I've done a lot for the struggle, as they say. And am I right?
Yeah.
You know, and it hasn't been easy.
Yes.
But it's because I care, because I love my people, that I have a strong desire for us to have parity in this society.
Amen.
And I am offended by people who assume that I have to be in a certain box. And these are people who don't do anything for the black community,
Amen.
or try to, as they say, uplift the race. And it's almost like, how dare you? You know, I'm really, it really is very offensive, because if you look at the numbers, black people in America have done horribly under Biden, and also horribly under Barack Obama.
Amen.
And we have to be bold enough to say it.
That. Amen.
And
Right.
because, you know, and then we were always told, oh, we can't talk about reparations because it'll cost too much money. Well, look at all the money that they're giving out checks for illegal immigrants who just got to
Amen.
this country.
That's unheard of.
And while we're passing out those checks, black people, I passed them on the way over here. And I'm not that far from, you know, I don't live that far from here. You guys know where I live. And yet, there are black people who are on the corner begging for bread.
Amen.
Because they don't have access to certain opportunities that we should have access to. And so I unapologetically stand up for the party of Lincoln. And that's not to say that every Republican is, you know, Stokely Carmichael in our party. I mean, there are some Republicans that, you know, oh my gosh, and some of them are black Republicans. I'm like, oh my gosh. But the tenets of this party, of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, of defense for the weak, such as the unborn child, of defense for the business owners. I mean, as a small business, to become a big business owner, many times you start as a small business owner. And having those streams of opportunity where you can get out there and make it yourself. We're black people. We built pyramids. We started Timbuktu. I mean, I can go down the list of the things that we've done and who we are. We just need you out of our way.
Amen.
And not to be an impediment for what we can do. And what I like more often about the party platforms for the Republicans is that it is about your God-given right. You know, we hold these truths to be self-evident. the things that I also hold self-evident. I've never met a man smarter than Fred Moses. I mean, I say that. I've never met a person bolder than Troy. I mean, the best that's out there is us.
Yeah.
All we need is to get out of my way, to not burn what I have built, and to allow us the opportunity to thrive. We are the seeds. Just don't poison the soil. And that's what I think that the Republican Party has always been a proponent of. And the day we stop being that, then I'll stop being a Republican.
Amen.
Because unlike some of the Democrats, they think you have one Democrat up there that's black that's going to support all black people, and you and I both know that's not the case. But the point is, and even Malcolm X, who a man that I have a lot of honor for, he said, oh my gosh, don't be a Democrat. Because they've been having the same, he wasn't great about any political party, but he definitely was like, oh my gosh, don't be a Democrat. I mean, because the Democrats are the party of the KKK, the party of Jim Crow, the party of keep us down, and you know, and yet they treat us like children. I mean, even Biden said, well, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
So let's start with that point right. Oh, you about to do something? No, you about to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say one of the stigmas that they put on us is we confused, we don't understand the party that has helped us the most. But if you look at history, the Republican Party has helped the black community more, in my opinion, than the Democrats.
And continues to do so.
Yeah.
The reason we have we're in the Martin Luther King library. The reason we Martin, who was also a Republican, but the reason we had the Martin Luther King's holiday, well, it wasn't Carter who signed that into law. That was Ronald Reagan, a Republican.
Right.
You know, and I can go on and on. It's like
Emancipation Proclamation, number one.
yeah. I mean, I can go on and on about our history, but it's so crazy that the people who harmed us the most, that we have given our allegiance to, and they have not earned our vote.
Right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to address the misconception, right? One that I see happening quite often is that Republicans hinder their right to vote. And it drives me crazy because it seems like they have been in this perpetual state of the Voting Rights Act or something, and the Democrats have used that year after year after year, and to bring up some issue. You know, even just recently, you know, the requirement to have a photo ID in order to vote became an issue. Because they had to do that in order to continue to perpetuate the lie that says the Republican Party is always out to hinder the black vote. And so that couldn't be further from the truth. Right. You know, they truly believe that Democrats had a part in that other than who signed it. But, you know, we know that in any other situation, an ID is required.
Right.
And that you would even have some white liberals be interviewed and asked the question, do you think that's a problem? Should they have to present an ID? And white liberals says, well, some can't afford an ID. And so, you know, for them, it's so condescending to black people to see that there would be anyone that would believe that black people don't, in this day and time, don't have the ability to get a photo ID. And we present it any other place. But how you can convince an entire group of people to stand behind that fight, that battle, is beyond me. Yeah. So, you know, but as long as they continue to perpetuate the issue of race, it's so blinding you can't see the reality of things. And so that's one of the misconceptions, I believe. Also, there's one more.
that we're mortal enemies. And I will say that, and many of us have worked in the elections process here in Dallas County. And oftentimes we have to work with Democrat judges and other Democrats and things like that. Well, I have a fantastic time with the entire group every time we have in an election. But you can tell when they first come in through the door, it's like this. It's like someone has been in their ear. These people are going to be this way, and they're going to do this, and they hate you. And watch, you know, they don't. It's a building up of distrust, and then we get to know each other. And we start to talk, and we start to talk about our families and our situations, and I find out about their situations. And then after a while, we start to talk, and I say, you sound like a Republican, you know, because there are issues that they have in their own party, you know, that they say, well, I never thought about it that way. So we have opportunities to have discussions with them. We're not mortal enemies. It's just that they've done so much of this to the point where people's emotions get, you know, they get enraged to that you can't listen. When your emotions take over, you can't listen. So if we could get everybody to drop their guard and we can have real conversations, I think they'll understand and see that we're not mortal enemies. They might actually find out that they really believe the things that we believe.
That's what I
And Warren, let me just say this in regards to the voter intimidation, and you know, as you spoke about, there was a study done, and I can send it to you. A group did a study in Georgia, and they asked black voters if they faced any harassment or anything in regards to this intimidation thing. 0%. 0% said they didn't experience any type of hostility or anything going to the polls. So those who watch CNN and MSNBC, they put the race objective in front. And so based on what's happened in the past, whatever, they still carry that forward. But I just wanted to say, and this is 2024, this was done during the 2023 election. And it's a reputable newspaper/magazine, but they said that 0% of black participants in the voting process didn't experience any harassment or any intimidation whatsoever. And this is done in Georgia.
Yep. But I think the other thing, and we the perpetual information out there on us, and it says a lot of us. I said, all of you all that are Republican, that we're wealthy people, you know, and that's where we came from. They don't know about, you know, a guy like myself and my family. We're from sharecroppers in South Carolina, and my mother, we lived in the housing projects in Connecticut, and so there are a lot of us have come up in the ranks, but they have a misconception. And I think that then about this myth that we don't care about other people, which we do, and we try and do more than we can to help people. Whether it's at the churches that, like Troy is in, and the work that he does, and so the things that I do in the community in terms of trying to help black people, black businesses, or just helping and then different non-profit organizations like daycares in our city, in our communities, and some of the black daycare centers, the black centers, you know, that more of us could be helping, and we're not, and we should be. You know, we should care about more about people and try and we those of us that have done well, we should, you know, we should be giving back, and we probably do that. We had a study about black Republicans and what they've done versus what black Democrats. You find really we are sensitive. And we do help people, you know.
It started with FDR and the Great Society program. That's where it began at, and that was the beginning of the handouts. And unfortunately, the black community didn't recognize that with the handouts that they were receiving, they already had more than that as a community. So they basically set aside the wealth of their community to get a government handout, which caused the wealth of their community to start to diminish, and their communities and the family unit started to diminish at that point. And so as an example, being in New York, there were a lot of strong black communities in New York. where the banks were black owned. They loaned money to not just black businesses, but to white businesses and to Jewish businesses and all of this. And so, but once those Great Society programs came in, those blacks in those communities said, well, hey, I can get some money from the government, so I don't really have to work as hard having my own business and these things. I'll just get this money from the government. So the government's giving you, a fourth of what you were bringing in from your business, but the fact that you're not having to do anything for it, you're like, well, I'll settle for this fourth rather than 100% of what I was getting, which I still can't figure out for the life of me where that mindset comes in. I'm a math guy, and that's just bad math. And then the next half of that came in with the LBJ back in the '60s. When he did his Great Society program. So FDR's was the Green Deal, or the New Deal. Now we got the Green New Deal that they're trying to do to manipulate us now. But here with Lyndon Baines Johnson, the racist Texan, who was a real racist, that the Democrats don't recognize as a racist, and he lived a Democrat, died a Democrat, and we drive down a racist highway, but we're upset about somebody else's name being on another highway. We'll fight over that, but we won't say anything about Lyndon having the LBJ freeway right here in Dallas, with one of the biggest racists that ever lived.
Amen.
And these are things. So you got to pick your battles, but you got to pick the right battles. And so we pick a lot of the wrong battles. So with the Great Society programs, it incentivized mothers to make the government be dad.
Right.
Because we'll pay you to make sure that there's not a father in the home.
Right.
And the more kids you have, the more money we'll give you. But we just need to make sure that there's no man in the house. And so that became the decimation of the family unit. And so now you're decimating the family unit. You've got a bunch of single moms raising kids, and you have dads being incentivized not to raise their children. Because, okay, we're going to pay for the kid, because child support wasn't a big thing back then. It's like the government will pay her for the kid, and you can go on and make more babies with other women, and we'll take care of all of your kids for you. What sense does that make? With the Republican Party, we're all about personal responsibility, and that's why a lot of Democrats can't get with us, because we're like, you're responsible for you.
That's right.
Nobody else is accountable for you but you. God gave you life and strength and a mind to work, and he gave you creativity. Nobody should be doing anything for you but you. We have people today, they're looking for other people to make them happy. Nobody can make you happy but you. Happiness comes from within you. Stop looking for other people to make you happy. Stop looking for other people to give you a handout. The Republican Party, we're about giving you a hand up. We want to get you in position so that you can flourish. We're not looking for equal outcome like the Democrats sell you on. We're trying to give you equal opportunity. I don't expect for you to be a millionaire if that's not what you want to do, you want to work toward. But I do want the government to get out of your way so that you can work as hard as you want, so that you can be at whatever level of life that you're comfortable at. And so that's where we are. So in the 60s, that's where all of this transitioned. And today, it's a slow process for them to, I don't know why it's a slow process, but it's a slow process for them to understand that you've been being manipulated for the last 50, 60, 80 years, and even more so the last 60 years. And I just really want them to really take a look into how this manipulation tactic has transpired. You hear this lie about, well, there was a party switched. There's never been a party switch. And this is what I challenge anybody that believes that there was a party switch. Who switched?
Well, what there was is that there was a party switch in the way black people voted. So because we were the party of Lincoln, the party of Frederick Douglass,
Right.
We voted in the Republican Party as a black. We were also prevented for being in the Democrat Party. They don't talk about that history.
They don't.
We were not even allowed to be in the Democrat Party,
Right.
which is why the the Black Panther Party came about
Right.
with Stokely Carmichael, or he turned into Kwame Ture. When he was down there with SNCC, working with the Southern Leadership Coalition, and he was in Mississippi, and he was like, we do not need to be registering votes for the Democrat Party. Now this is the Black Panther Party that came out of the Southern Leadership Coalition and with Martin Luther King. And so they said, well, we're going to create our own party, and then to create a party in Mississippi, you had to have an emblem. It had to be under some kind of, like we have, the Democrats have the donkey and Republicans have the elephant. So they had to come up with like a mascot. And in Mississippi, they came up with the panther. So they said, well, we're going to be the Black Panthers. And that was so the party of the Black Panther, their origins were in Mississippi, not in California, as so many people think. So it started in Mississippi for that reason, because they did not want any of those new registrations having to be registered under the Democrat Party, because Mississippi was a closed primary. So you have to register under a party. Texas is an open primary. You just register. You didn't have to be. But in Mississippi, which was controlled by the Democrats, since Reconstruction was controlled by the Democrat Party. And until very recent, it was controlled, had some kind of control with the Republicans. If you look at even our great state of Texas, the first statewide elected Republican was a man that I think was amazing, was John Tower. That was from 1960, when LBJ gave up the Senate seat to be the VP for JFK. The first in the South since Reconstruction. So all of these southern states were ran by Democrats, and yet you had 80% of Black people residing in the South at that time. So you couldn't be, it's like someone saying, well, I want to be a pencil Republican. There are no pencil Republicans, and because these parties did not exist. When Reconstruction happened, the Republican Party was kicked out of the South. And so when you ended up having Eisenhower, who was a Texan, Eisenhower, when he became president, and think of how bold he was the first to send federal troops to the South since Reconstruction to defend the children, when they were doing desegregation. And Brown versus Board of Education came under Eisenhower, a Republican. So you had all these states that were they were a uniparty. They were under Democrat control, and they were not budging. So many Black people had to vote. If you were going to vote, Republican. No, you were going to vote Democrat, because the Republican Party did not. Yeah. So that was the problem. But we changed a lot of times when the country changed. So when you had the Great Depression, which was a global depression, right. It wasn't just in America, under Hoover. And then Hoover didn't just lose Black votes, he lost white votes. So FDR came in and took the majority of all the electorates, because the people were hurting. Yeah. And when people hurt, they have to take care of themselves. Yeah. So that's what that was. But then when you have the 1960 election, and that should be studied, because Kennedy barely won that election.
Right.
And even though Nixon, who was the vice president, again, you have the Brown versus Board of Education, which was huge. Think about that. That was huge. To say Black kids can be in a school with white kids, and that would be okay, and they were not going to enforce desegregation, need to look at that clearly, and unfortunately we don't. But with that, and Nixon being the vice president and a friend of Martin Luther King Jr.'s, because how do I know that? There are letters that they wrote back and forth, that they corresponded. It's nice seeing you in Pat, it's nice seeing you in Karate, all of that thing, you know. But we don't tell our own story, and it was because he was in jail. Martin Luther King Jr. was in jail, and then they used the media when they came out and said, well, Bobby Kennedy, not JFK, but Bobby Kennedy reached out to Coretta Scott King about Martin Luther King being in jail. And then it came out the weekend before that election. And then many black people were like, well, he cares about black people, and that moved the needle to black people voting more for Kennedy than they voted for Nixon.
Calculated move.
Yeah, as they have done many, many times. But the thing is that an educated voter will vote their own interest.
Right.
And that doesn't matter no matter what color you are.
Right.
We have been encouraged to be an uneducated voter. We've been encouraged to say, oh, well, things are bad, but it's not Biden's fault. Well, whose fault is it? You know, taxes are high, but it's not Biden's fault. Well, why not? You know, it's his job. You know, when, you know, I'm from Dallas, when the Cowboys lose and they say, well, get a new quarterback, get a new coach. Why? Because you got to find the genesis of the problem and change it. We have got to change how we're voting. The other thing is, and Martin Luther King brought it out then, we are the rudder of this ship when it comes to who will be in power. Black people, even though our vote and our interests are not there, like I said, why are they telling us, oh, well, we'll do a study about reparations? They didn't do a study about sending those checks to legal immigrants for being here.
Amen.
So let me. You giving good points. I'm sorry. You want to go? Go ahead.
Well, just to echo her point.
Because I'm
you
gonna
asked-
come back to what you just said.
To go back to your question, why do we think we voted
Democrat for so
lockstep
long?
that way for so long? Big issue is just ignorance.
Yep.
Out and out. We don't know our history. We don't know our
Family
true
tradition.
story.
Right.
Then we've got tradition. And then on top of that, it's what I call the tragedy of the unexamined thought. We're not examining the way we think and following it to its natural conclusion. We've promoted, the big thing now is women's productive rights. That's just a fancy word for abortion. But
Yeah.
we've never considered that if we keep aborting our babies, we destroy our future.
We did.
Right.
It's I want to have this right, but if you have this right, the natural outcome of that right is you cease to exist.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're not even looking at these thoughts all the way through. We're getting this, and then as my friend here said, we get hyper emotional, and when you get hyper emotional, you shut down thinking. And now what we're seeing the media is
If they were
doing.
aborting white kids at
At the
the
same
rate that they are aborting black
Right.
kids, it'd be a different story.
I agree. But as we see, once you hit emotion, you stop thinking.
Right.
And what the media is doing now is keeping us emoting rather than thinking.
Okay, Tap, you got a point.
And let me say this in regards to the shift. It wasn't until FDR and the Great Society programs, because of the Great Depression, that's when we saw our first shift of blacks who were traditionally voting Republican, vote Democrat because of the hardships of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
We didn't see I would say the second shift to what we're facing now until the mid-60s with the Voting Rights Act. And so that's when we saw that shift from completely going from Republican to Democrat. I think it was those two legislative hallmarks that made the shift to what we see now. But also, let's also keep in mind that it was Democrats who were the ones who were what's it called when you it was Robert Byrd, it was Al Gore Sr. They filibustered. They
The civil rights legislation.
right. There was 3 white Democrat senators who were filibustering that Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1965 from being passed. And it was Robert Byrd out of West Virginia, longtime senator.
Right.
It was Al Gore Sr. out of Tennessee, and I can't think of the third one, but there were 3 white Democrats who were filibustering to prevent that Civil Rights Act from being passed.
Right.
So that's not something that that is talked about and or examined in regards to the Democrat Party. And as a matter of fact, Jackie Robinson, the great Jackie Robinson, was so upset at Goldwater out of Arizona for not doing more to make it stronger. Now, if you look back through history, Eisenhower also presented a civil rights legislation bill.
57.
Yes, and it was a lot more stronger and solvent than the 64, 65 Civil Rights Act. So there's a lot of things that the Republicans have done. And also, that 64, 65 Civil Rights Act would not have passed unless it had Republican votes.